All right. Well, good morning, everyone. I suppose it's 11 and just in trying to keep things in time for everyone. I suppose we can go ahead and just start with some of the basic stuff and let's folks join in as we speak. Uh, Thank you for participating in today's webinar, which is part of the local government education series that is jointly hosted by ISU Extension and our League of Cities. Some of you may know me, and I see some familiar faces. My name is Vishwa Das. I have been with Iowa State Extension for about 10 years now. And joining me are Erin Mullenix, which I assume most of you know from the Iowa League of Cities, and my colleague Julie Robison, once again, part of Iowa State Extension and College of Design. I am in Ames, and so is Julie, and I believe Erin is in Ankeny today. That's where she is joining us from. So once again, thank you for taking time to join us this morning. We will be recording this session because we have heard from a few folks who will not be able to make it. So we will be recording the session and sharing with you all. We'll also be sharing the slides that we are using today. So and we'll be sharing that with all of you. In terms of the motivation for today's topic, which is essentially looking at some of the educational resources and tools that we have been working on. And when I say we, I refer to ISU Extension, Iowa League of Cities, Iowa State Association of Counties. We have been working together, sometimes collaboratively, to have publications which we collaborate together, sometimes independently, but all of these resources are targeted at you all, cities and counties in Iowa. We do keep track of how our resources get used, and we try to reach out to find how well we are serving the information needs, the data needs that you all have. And we believe that although there is generally a sense that most folks know that what some of the resources we have and the tools we have, I think there is still a scope for more people to use it. So that was kind of the thinking of why we decided to spend one session just talking about all of the different kinds of resources and tools that are out there, which are once again targeted at all of you. The goal being to increase the use of these resources and tools among our local government officials. So the goal of the webinar overall is to share the, Julie, do you have the ability to mute? Okay, thank you. So the goal for today's webinar for the next 90 minutes is we are going to share the basket of resources and tools that we have been working on for a long time, almost 8 to 10 years. And then we also want these webinars to offer a platform where you all get a chance to talk to each other, because we strongly believe in peer learning, the experiences that each of you have doing your jobs, and how each of you can share what you do and how others can learn, and vice versa. So that's one of the other goals of the seminar. And then lastly, gather inputs and suggestions on any additional resources or any additional tools that might be useful in the work that you do at the local government level. So broadly, those are kind of the three broad goals. Erin will start out by talking about the city resources, and then we'll have a breakout session. Julie is helping us out with that. Then once we get past that, I'll spend some time talking about some of the resources for counties, and we'll break out for a second time, and then we'll wrap it up at the end. So that's the broad agenda. With that, I'll pass it on to Erin to take over from here.
Okay, thank you. Let me share my screen just one moment. Now, hopefully you can, oh, can you see that? Okay, good. So I will put in the chat box. My chat box has disappeared, so I'm looking. There it goes. I'm going to put this link in the chat box so you can follow along where I'm at. And I want to talk about resources that the League and Iowa State Extension through the CED, Community and Economic Development Program, the resources that we have to offer. I'm going to start with just a couple of slides, and I know you can probably see this in the sidebar, but I think if I go through the presentation mode, I won't be able to see the chat. So I'm going to keep that and just give me a shout if I need to do something differently. So what can you find at the League? There are a lot of resources on the Iowa League of Cities website. And after I go through just a few of these slides, I will just quickly show you that link so you can kind of know how to navigate the page. The League has a new website as of about 6 months ago. So it looks different than it did maybe last year when you were looking up some of the budget materials. There are a number of publications that we have available. I like the budget special report for those of you that might be attending the budget workshops that the League hosts starting next week. Several locations around the state. The city clerk and finance officer's handbook is another really popular one. There are so many out there to take a quick look at. Results from surveys. We have the utility rate survey, our League membership survey. A new one will be posted soon. It's our stability survey, which has been a really exciting topic to kind of explore this year as well. Some of the other resources that we have, if we go into the resources and the research page, there's a lot of information you may have used for the American Rescue Plan, related to recent legislation, COVID and the impacts on the economy, and then property tax resources. Some of the other ones relate to census, has been another big topic since the 2020 census, TIF and retirement programs. And then we also have a space on the League's page that's dedicated to our partnership between the League and Iowa State Extension. And so these are sort of some links that will get you back to the page that I put in the chat box, where you can look at some of the tools like the ones that I'm going to do a quick demo of today. So there are pages on debt. There are pages that look at individual cities compared to peer populations compared to the state, related to their valuations and general fund revenues and expenditures. The annual, this is the in conjunction with the Iowa Government Finance Initiative. I think this was maybe going to talk about the IGFI reports. And then today you're here talking with us at our webinar series. So I was going to talk for a few minutes about the revenue side. I think are you planning on talking about the expenditure side on the county?
Yeah, you can talk about the city side, and then my slides are mostly on the counties. Yeah. Okay.
So just really briefly, and I'm going to go in a little bit more detail as we demo the tool that this came from. This is a quick breakdown of general fund revenues. So general fund only by category and it's averaging all cities. But you can go to the tool that we're going to demo to see how your individual city has its breakdown of revenues and expenditures for the general fund. So we know that property taxes takes up, the largest chunk here, and then the other categories. So you can kind of go in and see, and you can pick on other cities to see how you might compare. Similarly, we have the expenditures piece, where the largest chunk typically is public safety, but on the expenditure side, really there is a difference if you look at the peer population groups. If you look at your city compared to cities of a similar population, this might look quite different. General government includes wages and staff. And so in a lot of our small cities, this piece makes up a much larger chunk of the pie than the average would show you here. So when we go into demo, you can kind of see how that might look for your peer population group as well. And just really quickly, this is actually some slides that are coming to you shortly in our budget workshop series, but I wanted to just quickly talk about rising local government expenses. We kind of already know that the cost of goods is outpacing inflation at the moment, and this changes pretty quickly. The price of construction materials, as many of you probably painfully know, as you're looking at doing your budget, has gone up. I included a link here. It's the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis that pulls in several inflation indices from a variety of sources, but usually pretty credible, trusted sources to kind of see, and you can pull up specific materials. The Iowa DOT's pavement price index shows about a 30% increase, and I think that seems to ring true. I like to include that because it kind of gives an Iowa specific example as we're talking about some of these other numbers that are a national source. And just in our conversations with you all, there are a lot of things that cities cite as rising expenses. And so I just thought I'd include that in today's discussion as well. So if I quickly go to the link, and I already have it pulled up, there are a number of resources on this page. If we covered all of the resources shared between the CED and the League, I'm afraid we'd have you here all day. So I will just highlight 3 very quickly, and I pulled them up already. The first one is this City General Fund revenues and expenditures. You can click on your city. That is the debt one. Okay. I thought I had one pulled up, but I don't see it. I think I had used, oh no, it's got to be here. Yeah, okay, it's here. So this is the city of Fort Dodge, just for example purposes. So when you click on and you select your city, it will pop up a customized report. This is going to cover the breakdown of city general fund revenues and expenditures, and then compare it again to those population groups, peer population, and the statewide average. So this is Fort Dodge. And this first graph, graph A, is showing just the distribution of property tax dollars, who is receiving the money as far as taxing authorities. So the cities, just under 30%. A lot of times we hear from cities that their residents think or believe that they are maybe getting all of that money. And so it's just interesting to show that, you know, what portions go to schools. Similarly with counties, they think, oh, I live in the county, it's all going to the county, and the portions that go to each of these. Then the breakdown. So graph B is showing the statewide average, and there's a key at the bottom that color codes. And of course, property tax is typically, almost in all categories, is the largest general fund revenue source. And then you can see the breakdown statewide. And then the graph in the middle, graph C, is your peer population. So whatever bucket population range that your city falls in, you can see how you compare to the average for your population range. And then graph D is city specific. So in this case, I've just pulled Fort Dodge as an example, and you can see that they compare pretty closely with their peer population group and the statewide average, but they've got some differences, like a little bit higher here for charges for services than maybe some of these other averages. And so then their breakdown is, kind of accordingly, a smaller share for maybe the transfers in proceeds and debt and capital asset sales category. So if we go to the next page, it's the general fund expenditures breakdown, and very similar to the revenue side. The top graph, graph E, is the statewide average. Graph F there is showing the pure population group, and then graph G is the city specific. So again, this is Fort Dodge, just for example purposes. And again, the population group, actually this one compared to the statewide averages is pretty close. But in this case, public safety takes up a little bit more compared to some of these averages in Fort Dodge than those other average ranges. And then we just have the appendix so that you can see what falls under each one of those categories a little bit more specifically. So this tool is out there for all 940 cities to pull up their sort of custom charts and comparisons. The next one that I wanted to briefly talk about was the city outstanding debt obligation report, and I pulled up a couple of examples here as well. Again, this is pretty brief. It's just 4 pages long, talking about outstanding debt obligation in Iowa. So about half of cities have outstanding debt obligation in a number of different categories. We put this together, I think, starting with fiscal year maybe 19. And the reason why is we got a lot of questions from media, other sources that took a look at local government debt as a whole. And we really wanted to break it down to cities in this case to see if these categories look different compared to, schools. And of course, the needs of schools and cities are very different sometimes. And so their breakdowns are pretty different. So we wanted to be able to share the main categories that cities hold debt or invest dollars into. So chart A, here's the statewide average. Utilities and sewer is probably not surprising that this is a very big category of investment in debt. And then transportation is also pretty big. I always have to add the disclaimer of this other category. It's very large on the debt reports. And the reason why is because the forms that you fill out each year to report your outstanding debt obligation have an other category. And oftentimes, if your project spans maybe more than one of the categories, say you've got a project that crosses between utilities and transportation, some cities might select other. And so this category is pretty big. But when we looked at some of the detail, what people put in as their descriptions for this category, they tend to largely follow kind of some of these other trends. But again, we've got the statewide average, the population range that you fall in, and this is Cedar Falls, just for example. And then chart C here is the city specific breakdown. So in Cedar Falls, they have the largest pieces, utilities and sewer, and then other, for example. I pulled up one more just for example. Again, the population range is fairly specific to the size of city, and then they've got a few other categories here. This is the utilities again, and 2 shades of green, so it's kind of tricky. It looks like healthcare, parks and recreation, and public safety kind of making up their categories. Then later on in the report, we can see these trends over time. So trends by category, we've got 2005, 2010, 15, and 20. Just to kind of show the history, because it's usually not always specific, because you've got maybe spikes as you have a big project coming on, and then as that debt is repaid. And then we have this statewide debt trends by category to compare to as well. So those were the 2 reports that I just wanted to make sure people knew were out there. I think a lot of times when I'm talking to people, they don't know that it's there. And so it's helpful to just point that out. And then I'll go over to the League's website as well to quickly just show little bar there. Our publication page. And then I wanted to highlight one update that we quickly that we put together. Just recently published the update on property tax assessment. So this is the assessment process, typically an 18+ month process, as most of you know and are very familiar with. But we have a lot of questions coming in asking about this process, and a lot of people think that the city kind of controls the assessment process at residents primarily, and we know that's not the case. That those are handled separately, following a prescribed and state regulated process. And so that's what we break down here, and it's just a handy little tool to share with people. And it's got an example here of a homeowner's taxpayer bill, and then the portion that a city would receive out of that bill. So this update just came out last month. It's on our webpage. I think Fiscal was going to talk about the city reports and the county reports here, so I won't go into that unless he lets me know otherwise.
So what we'll do is, I think we'll go for a breakout session now, and then when we come back, I'll start talking about maybe the county and the overall value of all of these resources and all that. So Julie, if you can take it from here.
Yeah. Would you mind just sharing back your screen?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
And go to the breakout number 1?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah, that would be helpful. So hi, everyone. Again, I'm Julie Robeson, and I work in Extension and Outreach for Iowa State University. And I'm excited to help to facilitate the breakout sessions for you today. And we're going to split you up for about 12 minutes into small groups of about 5 together. So that should give you enough to have some diversity of experience. And we'd like you to discuss this question related to your revenues. And first of all, it's kind of a yes or no part to this question. Are your expected revenues meeting your city or county fiscal needs? And are you specifically slightly less able to meet your fiscal needs than 3 to 5 years ago, significantly less able to meet your needs, slightly better able to meet your fiscal needs than 3 to 5 years ago, or significantly better to meet your fiscal needs in 3 to 5 years? So we just want you to spend a little bit of time thinking about that. Obviously, it's kind of just a gut check question, but just to think about where you're at on this spectrum. And then after you work through that and share that, the next question is, what are the key factors that are affecting your ability to meet or fail to meet your fiscal needs? And this is where I would suggest you really spend a little bit more time chatting about, what the factors are that are going into whatever your situation is. So I'll drop these questions in the chat as soon as we go into breakout rooms. And again, we're going to have about 12 minutes. And I'd like to ask if you could, toward the end of your 12 minutes, and I'll remind you, please select a representative to just share a highlight with the larger group. We'll have about 10 minutes just to share. So if there's something that feels like a highlight that's really, from your conversation, that will be just really helpful, because again, this is about, sharing what oftentimes we learn the most from each other. So just to keep that in mind. So I'm going to send you into breakouts now, and then just look for a message. Anybody have any question about that? All right, seeing none, please join your group, and then I'll call you back in about 12 minutes. Thank you. Jen, Angela, and Karen, just checking to see if you're with us and if you'd like to join your breakout group. And B-Swan, Aaron, you're free to move around if you want to check in with any of the groups.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
a-
I think so.
that will be a good way to do it. Yeah. So we have how many? 5 groups?
Yeah, there are 5 groups and looks like at least we have 3 in each group.
Okay.
So there's 4. There are 5 different rooms.
I have
Okay.
a question. Should I also be joining the breakout rooms?
Yes, you should. And I'm not sure. What's your first name?
That's Lighton. So Lighton is actually my research assistant. I
Oh,
asked her to join, so I think it will be a good idea for you to join one
Oh,
of these
I
rooms.
see.
Yeah, you can participate in the conversation. I thought it will be helpful for her. So
Yeah, sure. Lighton, do you want me to assign you to a room? Or do you want to just join? You can join. I think you're assigned to number 1. Yeah, you're muted.
Sorry.
Like-
Could you send me the link again to join?
Yeah, I'll just assign you.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I'm sending you to 2. You should be able to go there now. Do you see it?
Okay, thanks. I see it.
Yeah, you're so welcome. Hi, Nancy. I'm not sure if you've just joined Nancy, the group, but we have just gone to breakouts. And we're talking about a revenue question. So unless you'd rather not, since you just joined in, and that's fine, I'm going to send you to breakout room. And so please just join your group. Is that okay?
Thank you.
All right, great. And welcome. We're glad you're here.
okay. Well, I will join one as well.
yeah, I'm going to join. I'm going to the room with fewer people maybe. So the
Yeah.
last I'm going to judge 5. I'm going to number 5. So.
Okay. I will do, what do we have?
Okay, what we're finding out with our housing situation is we actually have a few infill spaces or lots that we could develop on. And we also have a couple of different development areas that could be developed into subdivisions and so forth. Our issue is that developers don't seem to want to take on that, with the supply costs and whatnot. We do definitely have a demand for them. We don't know how to satisfy that demand.
It seems like some of the developers get in this mode of recognizing the amount of profit they can generate by turning over so many homes quickly. When I worked in a different community that was a little bit more similar to Waverly, our challenge was just trying to entice developers to come to the community. And what I kept hearing them say was, there's not as much profit in it. I remember one developer said to me, Luke, you could help us build the house, help us with a down payment, and get so far as to offer to put a lawnmower in the garage. And that's not going to do it because the amount of properties we can turn over in the faster growing areas.
Sure, and that to me makes sense as well. I know our council just the other night did talk about, like I said before, incentivizing. They really feel like if they're going to incentivize, that they should do so for the modest income or the affordable housing type development. So nothing was really decided on that. It was just a topic of discussion.
Do you have a lot of available lots? developments that have opened up and you just don't have people to build on the lots, or are you just needing the developments in general?
Right, we have, like I said, we do have some infill lots, but we have one specific area that used to be an elementary school. And then after the 2008 flood, the city of Waverly purchased that area. And so we have, it's now a green space. But the city has offered ideas of townhouses, or apartment houses. The neighborhood is actually not real keen on doing something like that, which does seem to bother a couple of our council members and maybe not so much of our other council members. Some of them are feeling like if you communicate to the neighborhood, it tends to go smoother. And also the other part of it is why nobody told them how to build their house or, what to do with their properties. So we've kind of gotten flip-flop back and forth to those topics. But we do have a location there that it could house about 12 residential properties. They would just be smaller properties and they would be more like townhomes.
Well, it's a challenge.
I'm not sure if maybe you have some input, Biswa, or, maybe just here just to listen as well. Oh, he must have gone to another room. Okay.
What were some of the other items that they suggested that we chat about? Was it primarily just about the change in revenues?
Well, that's why I was trying to look back on the slides, but they've
Yeah,
taken
I
them
have
down.
it here. I took a screenshot of it. It was mostly just, are you expecting your revenues? Are your expected revenues meeting the needs? And then what are the key factors affecting your ability to meet or fail to those needs? So that was basically the extent of the questions.
I'm curious, do any of you, are you having any pushback on just property tax levels in general? I know everybody always complains about property taxes, but there's varying degrees. Is that a big issue for your communities?
In Waverly, it does seem to be a hot topic. This year is a year that the treasurer's office is going through and reassessing all of the properties here in town. They're on their 5-year cycle. So people have been angry and confused and basically, all of the above. So.
Yeah, a big challenge for us is trying to help people understand that why valuations increase. And it's really tough for that person that's been in a home for 10, 15, 20 plus years, and explaining to them that because everybody else is willing to pay more for homes, even over asking price in some cases, that functionally that makes all of our property valuations increase. It's a hard one to explain, and that's a big challenge for us.
Yeah, I would agree.
Sarah, would you like to share something about what City of Johnston is doing?
Well, I actually just started this week. I'm on day 4. So
okay.
I'm just listening mostly.
Okay, cool.
Sorry.
No worries. So overall, I think the thing that we wanted each of you to get a sense of, and for us to also get a handle of, is how well are the revenue needs being met. That was kind of where we are. Looks like so the National League of Cities released their survey results, I think, a few weeks back. Looks like cities are doing, cities and counties are kind of doing okay. Obviously, they didn't do the counties, but the NACO folks also have the same, some similar findings. Are you all feeling comfortable with where your revenues are currently?
You know, we talked about it a little bit before you joined us. And some of us were a little high, some were expecting a little lower.
Mhm.
In terms of comfort level, my big concern right now is Norwalk is a residentially growing community. We're kind of, I like to say we're in those awkward teenage years of growth where we're not seeing the commercial come along at the same pace as residential. And with the rising interest rates, we have quickly seen the amount of new construction slow down. So while next fiscal year, I feel pretty confident because we have another year of growing valuations. But in terms of growth, I'm a little bit more concerned about the next 2 to 3 years and what happens in the market. So some of what we're doing is trying to adapt right now to balance ourselves in preparation of a downturn.
I would agree with that, Luke. The one thing too that we're kind of cautiously proceeding with is our local option sales tax and how state legislation might impact that with what they've talked about in the past months. So we're, like I said, cautiously moving forward. So
Yeah, that excellent point. If there's something that keeps me awake at night, it's our state legislature, and that you brought up top of mind is that local option sales tax, and if that's going to be another way for them to pull some dollars from us.
Mhm. But with the Senate File 295, that was the legislation in 2013, with the backfill slowly going to be gone. Do you all feel that that gap, the backfill that fill this gap? Are you all ready for like a plan for how to fill this up, or you're almost there? How do you feel about that one?
I was having a good day until you used the word backfill. Like a nasty 4-letter word. That's been a roller coaster. The previous community I worked for, we spent years planning as if the backfill was going to disappear altogether.
Right.
Well, that proved to be almost a disadvantage because you did that. And then the state legislature said, well, you're planning to not use it anyway. So what's the big deal if we redirect those funds?
Mhm.
It's just really a double-edged sword.
Mhm.
Our approach has been, these are the funds we have right now. Let's plan accordingly. Keep our staff informed that if this changes at the state level, then we have to quickly adapt.
But does it put, with all those apartments that used to be multi-residential, that used to be part of commercial, now moving on to residential as far as the taxable valuation is concerned, does that put some of your places at a disadvantage, meaning that you have lower revenues coming in from the same properties that used to come 10 years back?
Not for us, because we have not had a lot of apartments in town.
Okay.
I'm not sure about some of the others.
yeah, we're kind of like Norwalk in that respect. We don't have, our apartment ratio to single family housing is low, in my opinion. So we're getting there, but we have had 2 apartment complexes built up since probably since 2016.
Okay.
So we have increased those quite a bit.
Looks like we need to get back to the main room now. So good chatting with you all.
We hope that you had a chance to share what's going on in your communities and a little bit of give and take in your breakouts. And we want to just take about maybe 5 or 6 minutes and ask each group if you would just share kind of one item that speaks to how the communities in your groups are doing. Are you meeting your expected fiscal needs, kind of more or less? And then what are the factors that are affecting your ability to do that? And so let me just jump to group number one and ask if you can, if you have someone that's willing to jump in and share, just unmute yourself and share with the rest of your colleagues here. Group one, that would be Angela, Bradley, Brent, or Tony.
Well, I don't think anybody'd object. I think I talked more than I needed to probably in our group. So, but we, you know, it's interesting. We had a bunch of people that have been in their position for less than 6 months. I'm feeling pretty senior because I've been in my position for 14 months. But 19 years in city government, so not new at this. You know, I think kind of what our discussion was is, you know, I mean, maybe, you know, holding steady, definitely a lot of risks and challenges there. You know, those big challenges, you know, construction inflation is tremendously higher than baseline inflation. You know, we have seen a positive in recent years as far as local option sales tax growth. Wastewater plants are a huge issue, and that ties into the construction inflation. You know, we're getting hammered again by the state on wastewater plant mandates. So it looks like the state's doing something with clean water, which it isn't otherwise. So we get to shoulder that entire cost, and those costs are outrageous. You know, I was talking about a community of under 8,000 that just got back a $78 million tab for their wastewater plant, and that is just a colossal figure. I mean, just unbelievable. You know, when I was in a community of that size before, and we had a wastewater plant that cost $20 million, the public was ready to come out with pitchforks and torches. So I don't know what you do at 78 million. And then really the other big risk to us is every time the legislature's in session, we fear for our continued solvency as a community, because they're just so happy to steal whatever money they can steal. And local option sales taxes maybe next on that list. And I think that's really scary for our community's ability to provide services.
Right. Well, thank you, Brent. You sure covered a lot of territory there. I appreciate that. Let's go on to group number two. And in that group, we had Brittany, Jody, Karen, Leighton, and Lori. And do we have someone who might be willing to share a highlight or two from your group?
This is Jody, and I think that our group was bowing out at who was going to speak. So I will do the honors, hopefully, and capture everything. But I think Brent said it exactly how all of our communities were responding. You know, there's a lot of fear of future expenses, and with the wastewater mandates, it's putting a lot of fear within the communities. If anybody else wants to jump in, please do.
Right.
Right, Jody, I agree. And also the city of New Hampton, we're having an ambulance crisis. So the government has, county government has started their own department, and the city of New Hampton is going to have to come up with $352,000 for an annual fee for at least 5 years. So we're currently asking the voters to allow us to use our loss funds, which are tabbed for infrastructure, to be utilized to pay the ambulance first. And if that vote doesn't go through here in 2 weeks, then the general fund is going to get demolished. So a lot of stress. So
it sounds like it. Well, thank you, Jody and Karen, for sharing. Let's keeping all these things in mind, which is really helpful for everyone to hear. Let's move on to room 3. And in that room, we had Adam, Grace, Jamie, and Janet.
Yeah, hi, I'm Adam Griggs, Mayor of Central City. We talked mostly about the nervousness of changes at the state level, local option sales tax, and then water and sewer rates. You know, we've done our sewer plant, and that was painful. And then the state came back around and found PFAS. And so now we're looking at a well, and we need a water tower also. And so it's like, how much of that burden can you put on user rates and your citizens? So it's really difficult for elected officials because, yeah, I mean, we can do it for $7 million and just stick that on the in the fees. And then really prioritizing the other construction costs that we have to take out general obligation debt for.
Right. Okay, thank you very much, Adam. That was really helpful and insightful. We see some trends and themes through all these conversations, and utilities and wastewater is a big one. Okay, room number 4, we had Barb, Jacob, Emrud, and Rhonda. One of you care to share?
Yeah, we talked same things that have been mentioned. Lost, for Algona this last year, we saw a couple 100,000 increase in that, and that was really the only thing that saved us because our general fund property tax went up by less than 1% on revenue. Sewer, water fees, dramatic increases on those. Fear of what the state might do with rollback, and then we talked a little bit about road use tax, with being rural small communities. If we see population declines, even if the per capita goes up, we're seeing our numbers go down, and in terms of revenue, but the cost of projects and maintenance and employees is only going up.
Okay. Lots of pressures there. Thank you, Jacob. Room 5, and this is our last group. We have Sarah, Luke, Jen, and then C. Geyer. One of you care to share? Anything different than what we've heard about so far, or things that are unanimously the same?
Legislation, big one. So I'll echo that. That's what keeps us awake at night. One interesting that came up was about housing. Some of the communities in the group are experiencing some growth and some nervousness about that slowing down, and some others in the group that have been struggling to try and get some housing developments to happen. That was kind of a relationship to future revenue. Otherwise, echo a lot of the other items that have been discussed already.
Right. And then, and thank you, Luke. And in those communities where the housing was either you had a growing need or you had difficulty, kind of what size communities are you talking about?
The two main ones, Waverly and Norwalk. And I think we're actually, Waverly, I think you guys are just under 10,000. Is that right?
With the last census, we're actually just over 10,000 now.
Okay. All right. So thank you very much. What a really wide array, and just in general, cost of inflation. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more when we get to expenditures. Just the enormous expenses for wastewater and water plants. On the legislative side, the fear of losing funds and some specific concerns about the local option, the road use tax, various different rate associated items. And then in addition, managing the growth and how do you accommodate for housing. So thank you. Those are all really, really good contributions. And I think it's helpful for us to share with each other because we get a sense of what others are experiencing. Hopefully you'll keep track of if there's someone in the group that had something that you might like to follow up with them about. This is also an opportunity for you to network with your peers. So I'm going to turn it back to Aaron and Biswa, and we're going to have another breakout in a little bit. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Julie. I will transition to talk a little bit about the counties. Although I must admit that between Erin and me, I believe have more city resources than county resources, but that's not to suggest that counties are any less important. So I have been working with the folks up at ISAC for a number of years, and we collaborate on a number of things. So this is just a brief summary of some of what we have for the counties in Iowa. Just like Erin mentioned, the Iowa Government Finance Initiative customized reports for the cities. We have a similar report for counties. So we publish them simultaneously. So for each of the 99 counties, we have been doing this for about 8 years now. That's one of the more widely used reports as far as cities are concerned, and we'll go into that in a little bit. The other thing that I have been doing is we have an index that tracks the fiscal health of counties, and we have a similar index for the cities as well. The fiscal health index, which is broken down into fiscal capacity and fiscal effort. The capacity part refers to the property valuation on a per capita basis, and the fiscal effort is something that tracks the levy rate both at the city and county level. And I have a table to share to kind of walk through what we do and how you interpret that and what's the meaning of that. So we also do a lot of peer analysis. So essentially we work with a lot of data, and I must mention the Iowa Department of Management, Ted Nelson from the cities, and Carrie Johnson for the counties, who continue to provide us with the data year after year that we use to do all of this work. So the big question then becomes is, what are some of the ways that these resources that we provide, what are some of the potential ways that those could be used? And this applies to both cities and counties. The whole goal to begin with is to provide educational content, which allows local officials, both elected and appointed, to better understand their local situation. And the way these reports and these resources are prepared is to provide a robust understanding of local demographics, the population changes, local economy through a few select indicators, looking at the legislations happening at the state level that impact both cities and counties. So the broad goal is, while the broad goal is educational, the overall motivation is to create these so that decision making becomes a bit easier, meaning that for both elected and appointed officials, they have access to information that allows them to make better decisions. The other thing that a lot of these resources do is actually help cities and counties as they issue municipal bonds. The ratings process of the municipal bonds essentially rely on reliable information of local economic conditions, local financial conditions. And so these reports essentially serve as a credible third-party, independent and unbiased validation of local economic and fiscal conditions. I've heard many times from different places that the bond attorneys essentially look at these as a credible source to validate the situation on the ground. Our reports are also created in a way that helps cities and counties to use them for in-grant applications. Now, we use the most current census data on demographics and economics, the most current data on local finances. So what it does, it basically, with the customized information we provide, it helps local governments to use that in grant applications. And then the other effort that we make is to use aggregated data in a way to facilitate peer comparison. And peer comparison is a key when it relates to local finances, especially because there is no certain way that a city or a county could approach, generating revenues or spending the dollars they have, unless you begin to see what others are doing. There is no target as to how much level of spending is appropriate for the different services that are provided. So that way what happens is the peer analysis that we do comes in handy. We do compile in both of the city and county reports the key legislation that happens at the state level that impacts local finances. You know, more recently we have had House File 2552 and Senate File 2374. You know, the first one essentially looked at transitioning existing business property tax credit into an assessment limitation, meaning the rollbacks. And then the second one, the 2374, looks at some of the administrative changes to the local option sales and service tax, Department of Revenue moving away from estimated payments to actual lost receipts. So those are examples, and it goes all the way back to 2013. So if you're trying to find a place, find information on major legislation that impacts your budgets, your financial situation, the educational reports that we put out essentially track them all the way, almost 10 years. So you can track all of those pieces of legislation that are key to both cities and counties. In terms of the, so this is basically from the county report. In terms of the demographics, what we do is we track not only the population at any given point. Obviously, we have the 2020 census data included in our reports, but we also include changes in population, which is in fact more important than the actual population. And then the changes in population as they relate to age, income, ethnicity, the commuting patterns within a county, in a city, the extent of poverty, and obviously the most important of all, the housing situation at the city and county level. So if you're looking for the most updated information on these issues, these topics, you need not go anywhere. You simply download the customized report for your city or county, and you have all of these kind of presented in a way that you can take them out and use it. The other aspect of these reports are that they not only illustrate the data visually and through tables, there's actually an explanation for each indicator. For example, what does the age distribution data tell us? Why is it important? What are some of the ways that you could use that information? So it's not just simply presenting tables and figures, but there's a narrative within these reports that actually help you to get a sense of the potential ways that you can actually use the information. Likewise, for the local economy, we track the economic conditions. These reports track not only the city and county economic indicators, the data tied to the local economy, but also compare them to the state level. As far as counties are concerned, you also get to compare yourself. If you are a metro county, you get to compare with metro averages. If you are a non-metro county, you get to compare your numbers with non-metro averages. Similarly, with household incomes, employment, retail spending is another part that, while not included in these reports, but Iowa State does have retail spending reports dating back more than 40 years through the economics department. That also helps you to understand the local retail situation in your city and county.
Biswa, do you see there's a question? Oh, Aaron, you've dropped the link in. Thank you.
Okay. Also, is that what it was?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So I won't spend much time going over these categories, but just to highlight that the reports that we publish both for counties and cities track the major sources of revenues. And then we, of course, use the population data to convert each of these sources into per capita estimates. What it does, it allows you to understand the trends over time. So if you're tracking property tax, a revenue generated at the city or county level, you are not only looking at a particular year, but also looking at how the trends look over a 5-year period. And we have been talking a lot about the rise in prices. So to factor that in, we actually adjust all of these information all of the data to factor in for inflation, which means that you get to compare inflation adjusted numbers to see the real trends as far as revenues and expenditures are concerned. So Lighten is here. So we, like I said, we use both aggregate and disaggregated data. This is an example of trying to compare the major revenue sources by different population sizes for counties. So the 99 counties were broken into 4 groups. The one in blue refer to the counties with less than 10,000. The one in red is between 10 and 25,000. The green color refers to the counties with 25,000 to 50,000. And then the purple one refers to those counties with more than 50,000 population. So in one chart, we are able to illustrate all of the major sources of revenues and break it down by population size and then compare them side by side. So it is fascinating because we can just spend a whole hour looking at this and talking about why the numbers look the way they do. But once again, that's the whole purpose, is to trigger a conversation. If you are a county between 25,000 and 50,000 and you see certain trends in that group, you can compare it with your peers and then try to understand what's going on. If your numbers are way off from the median, it's a valid question to go in and see what's going on, so that it helps better understand the local situation. Same thing for county expenditures, and I'm going to just skip this one because it follows a similar pattern. We track all of the major expenditure categories for counties, just like the way we do it for the cities. And this one essentially is looking at, once again, breaking the counties into the 4 subgroups that I just talked about and comparing the median per capita spending. The second thing that, besides the reports that's published for the counties, the second thing that we do using aggregated data is looking at the fiscal health. And to do that, we use property valuation, taxable valuation data, and the levy rates, both at the city and the county level. And then we create 2 indexes. The first one that is referred to as fiscal capacity essentially allows you to understand the property tax base that exists at both a city and the county level. And the fiscal effort essentially tracks the levy rates that exist, once again, at the city and county level. So for doing this index, creating this index, the 940 cities were broken into 6 groups, subgroups, and the counties were broken into 4 subgroups. The same criteria used in the previous slide. What I'm going to share is a sample of what the index looks like. So what you're seeing here is the group of counties that have population over 50,000. And I've colored them in blue, red, green, and brown. I want you to look at the last 2 columns, fiscal capacity and fiscal effort. Now I can sit and explain how all of these calculations were made. It's going to take a lot of time, but I'm just wanting to highlight what the fiscal capacity numbers look like. How do you interpret them? And how does the fiscal effort index looks like, and how do you interpret them? So the one in blue, which is Woodbury County, the fiscal capacity is 87.35. So fiscal capacity is tied to the per capita valuation that the county has to generate the amount of property tax revenues that they need to. So if the group is indexed at 100, if the number is less than 100, it means that your per capita valuation is relatively lower compared to the rest of the counties in this group, which means that Woodbury County's per capita valuation is slightly lower than the group's average. And that would translate into, you would expect a higher fiscal effort. That means if the effort is indexed as 100 for the group, If your number is greater than 100, it simply means that the levy rate in this county is higher than the weighted average for all of these counties in the group. So for the Woodbury County, the number is 103.97. That means it's about 4 points greater than the group's weighted average when it comes to the levy rate. The one in red, which is Polk County, here you see that the index is higher than 100, which means that relative to the group, the county actually has a slightly higher per capita valuation, but their levy rates are also equally high, which simply means that this is their over reliance on property tax. If a place has a robust tax base but is still having a higher levy rate, it can be interpreted as the county having a slightly more reliance on the property tax rate. And this is true because up until a couple of years back, Polk County didn't have the cities in Polk County didn't have the local option sales tax, which puts a county like Story County, which is in brown, where they have a low capacity, but they also have a low effort, meaning that while relative to the group, the per capita valuation in Story County is not at par with that, they still have a lower levy rate, which simply means that Story County has access to non-property tax revenues. And for those of you who know Story County, it indeed does attract a lot of visitors, especially due to the city of Ames and Iowa State University, which puts the local governments here at a much advantageous position. So Story County is an example of having low capacity, but still able to have a low levy rate. And then the last one is Dallas County, which has a much higher capacity, meaning that on a per capita basis, Dallas County has significantly higher valuation to generate property taxes, and they have significantly lower levy rates, which is expected, because if you have a higher tax base, you need a lower levy rate to generate whatever revenues that need to be generated. So this table is for the largest counties, the group of largest counties. We have tables for all of the different subgroups for counties as well as cities. In the process of updating the cities' fiscal effort and fiscal capacity index, we have the one for counties ready and available. So that's pretty much where I think I would like to stop. And so the goal was to essentially highlight some of the resources we have for counties, using some of the disaggregated data at the county level, as well as using aggregated data to do a few things. And the fiscal health index is one such example. So Julie, I will let you take it from here, and I'll have the question on the screen now.
Okay, thank you, Biswa. That was all very interesting, a lot to take in, great resources. So thank you. So the next thing we're going to do is talk about our expenditures, and I'm going to send you back into the same breakout groups. And we would like you to we'll take about 10 minutes. We have about 20 minutes left in our session. So I'll keep it really tight to about 10 minutes, and then ask you to talk about this issue. How is inflation affecting your expenditures? What category of expenditures is most impacted by inflation? How are you managing the unexpected impacts? And then do you have any lessons learned or tips you can share with your colleagues? And I'll drop these in the chat that comes to your breakout room. My apologies for sending them to a chat that didn't get to you the last time around. So I'm going to go ahead and launch the breakout rooms now, and then we'll reconvene and share some highlights. Okay, here we go.
Welcome back. So this is something I suppose everyone is dealing with, not just at the city level, but at the household level. Inflation is a household problem now, so I think there's enough to be said about it. But I'll let you all kind of share what you are experiencing when it comes to the high cost of providing services, and are there certain areas where you feel the pressure more than some other areas. So.
You want us just to start, just answer the first one?
Yeah, you can. Yeah, whatever you know, just share how at your city level you see this.
You know, for us, I want to say we're probably 90 to 95% people. I mean, it's staff. That's what our major expenditure is. So for us, other than some of our bigger projects, whether it be a water or sewer line, street paving, we're seeing some increases in those. We're building a new athletic complex. Those numbers came back about 25% high. But really a bulk of our year-to-year expenditure is staff. And the way inflation is impacting us is the cost to employ people is going up because of their individual impacts by inflation. So kind of a roundabout way of saying that it's impacting us through having to increase wages to be competitive.
So your city has seen rise in wages as far as the new hiring is concerned. Is that what?
Yes.
Okay.
We did a large wage study recognizing that inflation was having an impact, and we used that to guide some salary adjustments across the board.
Okay. And are the residents in the town, been supportive of this? In any sense that you have on that?
That particular question, it's hard to answer it across a community of 12 to 13,000 people. Generally speaking, I would say the sentiment is that they recognize to keep good staff, you're going to have to compensate competitively.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody likes paying higher taxes. That's where we get most of our dollars. But I think there's a recognition to keep good people on board. That's what it takes.
Okay.
I would love to say the entire community feels that way, but
Oh, okay. Well, Jen says she doesn't have a microphone. Sarah, I know you are new to the position, but what is your overall sense of where things are in the city?
Well, not sure. The one thing I have been working on right now is payroll budgets and, looking at that increased cost in payroll as well. And playing around with, what percentage factor to even begin thinking about for next fiscal year to obviously make up for that rise in inflation. But.
Mm-hmm. I think you are at a point where you can actually use a lot of our resources. You can download a bunch of these and those. This is specifically for a situation like yours. When you go into a new city, here are a bunch of resources that you can just skim through, and it gives you some idea about the trends over the last 5-7 years, what's been going on in the population, the local economy, finances. So that's kind of what our goal is to help. And we recognize that there is a high turnover of local government staff, just like elected officials as well.
Right.
So that's specifically the type of audience we think of. So please use some of our resources and let us know if how they help.
Yeah, absolutely. And that will be tricky in general too, because I came from auditing and
okay.
So I'm somewhat familiar with state or local government, but I'm on a backward retroactive aspect because we're always looking at a year behind. So versus looking forward. So it'll be a mindset change for sure.
And the other question, which is kind of tied to this, is in trying to keep expenses in check, has that affected any of the services that the city provides, in trying to make sure that you are not overspending has that influenced any of the services, like keeping the public library open for a couple of fewer hours, or has any of those things happened, or has it just been trying to adjust to the price increase to meet the spending that's necessary?
I would say that, so this is heavily tied to inflation. The cost of services or inflation specifically, us having to spend more on books, for example, no, that's not making an impact on our hours at the library.
Mm-hmm.
But we have found ourselves we had to close our pool because we couldn't find enough lifeguards, which you could argue is because we weren't paying enough. We weren't competitive enough. It's the same thing at the library. So those are a couple services that have been impacted, but it's more by staffing.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'm kind of linking staffing or the expense of staffing to inflation. Beyond that, where we saw it in terms of service levels, I would say it has not had an impact yet. But with the increased amount of dollars that are going towards staffing, I could see where there could be some negative impacts in the future. Just hard to predict right now.
And in terms of the interest rate hikes at the city level, are decisions being postponed? I know the home market has been significantly affected. People postponing decisions to buy homes. So in terms of the city's long-term spending, has the interest rate influenced how the city council and all of you at the staff level wait for to kind of study the interest rates and then make a decision?
Yes, it's kind of strange. Because of inflation, we've had some increase in cost for some of our building type projects. We haven't noticed quite as much on the water and sewer side or the streets, but definitely on constructing buildings. And that has caused us to have to push some other projects out further because of an $8 million or $9 million project, the price tag is coming in closer to $12 million.
Wow.
So that's forcing us to push off some other $2 million projects to be able to finish paying for this, the current building we're working on.
It's been the housing market is a perfect example. You have higher prices to buy a home, and then you have to borrow at a higher interest rate. So you're being hit from two directions. And I think the same applies for the government as well. So, we'll just have to wait and see what's the tipping point from where things start going south again. It's been an upward increase in pretty much everything you see around us. So in terms of what you hear from residents, has the city received any feedback from the residents in terms of some of their needs as they deal with these difficult circumstances? Like
we did have some negative backlash on the pool not being open as often. However, the formal surveys that we do with our citizens, the results that we had, now granted, we don't do that every year, it's every other year, so there's a little bit of time delay. But the last community survey that we did, we did not have any negative feedback. There was support of the city. The only additional things where we saw some push by citizens, believe it or not, was not to lower taxes, but to direct more dollars into street maintenance.
Yeah, I think so. I'm part of a couple of research studies where we look at quality of life in communities, how people perceive their communities, the quality of life that they enjoy, and that's a big aspect. Municipal services are a big aspect that influences how people perceive, and that cuts across all communities, small or large. You want your streets to be good. You want to have a nice park. Even if you're a town with 300 people, you still want that nice park because you feel that that contributes to a better quality of life. So that's a big topic, and one of the things that our data does is allows us to get into these research projects where we actually use the information, the financial information. It informs us, the level of spending, how that translates into people's perception of their quality of life and all that. So that's the other dimension of how Erin, myself, Julia, and others, we use all of this information. So, well, I suppose it's time to go back to the main room. Nice talking to you, Luke, and
Well, Viswa, hey, I need to add real quick that I need to go to another meeting. So
Okay.
if you wouldn't mind taking the role of updating them on what we
Okay.
talked about, that'd be great.
Okay, thank you. I'll do that.
Hey, everyone, welcome back. I'm expecting there was a lot of conversation on this topic of expenditures. And we just have room 3 and 4. They are wrapping up and they're coming back now. So welcome back, everyone. I hope you had good conversations in your groups. And we're going to move this right along because we want to keep on time. We know everyone's busy. So let me just ask if a representative from group room number 1, and that would be either Brent or Tony, if you could share a highlight from your conversation about how inflation is affecting your expenditures, and if you have any tips for managing that.
Yeah.
Brent or Tony?
Yep. So we, basically, to the point that we talked about in the first breakout, construction inflation is really tough right now. As far as grappling with it, it's basically either you're going to have to delay projects or you're going to have to just deal with it. I don't know what real alternatives that we have. We did here in Mason City, we did put off we had a cemetery shop project that we got bids back, and we were close to double the original estimate. And so we did reject those bids, and we're going to potentially rebid in the spring. Hard to say whether that'll be successful or not. If things continue to go, maybe it'll be even more expensive. In terms of our financial planning we have nutrient reduction that we have to do for our wastewater plant. We think that's going to be in FY26. So we're just kind of in the planning stages for that, and we've already had our cost explode on that. And so where we were looking at thinking it was about 14 million, we're at about 25 million now. So that's changed our approach a little bit as far as we do cash flow documents for all our utilities and keep those up over time, and it'll just mean we're just going to have to raise the rates a lot more significantly than what they've been raised already. We're already doing yearly increases to try to just kind of keep up with the general cost of things. But then we're just gonna have to crank the rates up significantly higher than what we had planned on.
Okay, thank you, Brent. That was a great report, a sobering report. So delaying projects or raising rates. Thanks for sharing. Group number 2, we had Brittany, Jody, and Lori. Do we have a volunteer who can jump in and share from your conversation?
Sure, I can.
Thank you, Lori.
I think it's all, it comes down to making sure you get the rates raised before they need to be raised. The costs skyrocketing and having to reevaluate what you're going to be able to do with your general fund. Here in the City of State Center, our roads are going to be what takes a hit because of the population decrease and road use taxes. Our general fund just doesn't have any extra room. So
Okay.
I think that's the way for most of the cities in our group.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Lori. Maybe we could take one more group, and Do we have a volunteer from either 3, 4, or 5?
I'm happy to go.
Okay, thank you, Adam.
So the two things that we touched on were just construction costs and wages. I don't know if we really had any answers for what to do about either of those things. For construction, we said the same thing as everyone else. We're just going to have to be even more choosy about which projects get done in the near future. And wages, I don't think there's anything we can do. If you want to stay competitive, you just have to pay people more.
Right. It's a tough situation. If anyone else has anything that might have been different from what the individuals in our first 3 groups have shared, please feel free to put it in the chat. We will make a record of that, and so it will still is helpful to share. But I want to just thank you for participating in those conversations. I hope it's been helpful, and I hope you've made some connections, maybe learned a bit with each other. And I'm going to pass it back now to Biswa to wrap us up. And again, thank you so much for participating with us today.
Thank you, Julie. As we wrap up, like I said at the beginning, the goal for us, both the IACU Extension, the League, and ISAC, is that all of these resources that we spend time and effort to create for you all, we want you to use them. So please share it. If you're an appointed official, share it with your city council members. We want the city council folks to have these resources with them at a city council meeting. So please share with colleagues, and further, if beyond what we already shared, if there are inputs that you would like to share with us that can help us create new resources that meet your needs, please don't hesitate to let us know. You have our emails, myself, Erin, and Julie. So if there are areas where you think we can be helpful, please let us know. We have the capacity, we have the data, and we certainly can create additional resources if that's going to be helpful. The next webinar in this series is going to be in mid-December, and it's a very interesting topic. It's going to be looking at recreational amenities, improving quality of life in Iowa communities. Erin and me, we are part of a big project that looks at the quality of life in Iowa communities, and recreational amenities are a big part of that. So we are going to spend time in December trying to identify a few select cities who are willing to share their stories on what they have done when it comes to recreational amenities. We'll also be using some data to highlight how cities have been prioritizing spending when it comes to this area. So you can look forward to our email that will come in the next few weeks. We appreciate you taking time to join our webinar. And like I said, please share it with your colleagues in your town, in other towns, because we are here to serve you all. So thank you so much, and have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you all. And if you do have a unique and interesting parks and recreation type project that we might pick on you to help us out in December, please do let us know as well. Thanks again.
Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. Have a nice day.
Bye-bye.